Hungarian Folk Tales. The Pelican Bird. Once upon a time, there lived an old king, and the old king did not know whether to weep with sorrow or to weep with joy. My dear daughter, when I was young, I had a pelican bird that could sing so beautifully. And as long as I heard that pelican bird sing, I stayed forever young and forgot all my troubles in the world. But one day my pelican bird vanished overnight, and I searched far and near to find it again, but sadly failed, and that is why I feel such sorrow. But I also feel great joy, because in all my travels, far and near, I have never seen a maiden fairer than you, my dear. Well, father dear, if that is so, I will not marry until somebody brings that singing pelican bird back to you. Oh, give it up, dear daughter, because you will die an old maid. No, father, I will keep my vow. So the beautiful princess announced to all the world that she would only marry the man who brought back her father's singing pelican bird. So princes arrived and were sent forth to search the four corners of the world, but they all returned without the singing pelican bird. A handsome young tailor lived in the royal court, who could not bear to see his sovereign look so sad. So he packed his bag with bread, bacon and onions and set off in search of the singing pelican bird. The young tailor walked until he found himself in a dark forest, where he met a grey-haired beggar, and the beggar said, "Give me a slice of bread, and God will reward you." "Very well, old man, here you are. I know that you have come to this place to find the pelican bird. Many young princes have passed through this forest, and I asked them each for a slice of bread, but none of them helped me as you have, and they all went back to the palace empty-handed. A good deed deserves a just reward. The pelican bird is to be found beyond the vast ocean, but you cannot walk to this place. You need to go and see the old witch, who lives deeper still in the dark forest." "Greetings, old lady. Do you enjoy good health? What brings you to this far and forgotten place?" "I'm on a quest to find a pelican bird that can sing beautiful songs and flew away beyond the vast ocean. But I intend to cross that ocean because my king cannot live without his beloved pelican bird. If you will lend me your horse, I promise that the pelican bird will make you a girl again." "Go ahead and take my horse. It's tethered under the bridge." So the young tailor fetched the horse and saw it had a mane of gold. The horse suddenly spoke and said, "Climb on my back, master." "Master, I shall leave you now. You must travel on and ask about the whereabouts of the pelican bird, because one good question is worth 100 bad guesses." "Wait, I shall give you this whistle. If you're ever in trouble, blow it and I will appear." "Very well, horse," and the horse vanished. So the young tailor walked and walked until he met an ancient old woman. Old lady, please show me the way to the pelican bird. I plan to take it back to my king, whose heart is half filled with sorrow since it left him." "I know, my child. I'll happily show you the way. Do you see that distant forest? You will find the pelican bird stuck up in the highest tree. where the poor thing has been suffering all these long years. So the young tailor hurried to the distant forest and soon found the tallest tree. And there, sure enough, he sighted the pelican bird stuck up among its branches. He tried to climb the tall tree, but failed, and the young tailor was heartbroken. Did you call me, master? Yes, I did. The pelican bird is up in the tree, but I cannot climb it. Worry not, master. You just climb up on my back, and we shall fly to the top of the tree. With one hand you can lift up the tree branch, and with the other, take the bird and hold it good and tight. It took the young tailor a week and a day to journey back to the palace, where he tried to get the bird to sing for the king. Sing, Pelican Bird, we're home again at last. When they returned, the old king soon heard the pelican bird singing sweetly. And he was an old king no longer. Then they held a wonderful wedding feast, and all lived happily ever after. And that is where my story ends. Hungarian Folk Tales. Starving Matthias. Once upon a time, very far away, there lived a very poor man. He was as poor as could be and had nothing to his name. His name was Starving Matthias, for he had nothing to eat. One day Matthias made up his mind to go into the forest and hang himself. He looked hard at all the trees to see which one would be best for the job. And as he was busy doing this, the devil appeared before him and asked, "What are you looking for, Matthias?" "I'm looking for incense to smoke you out of hell." This frightened the devil so much that he promised to give Matthias anything he wanted. "Then give me 200 pounds of gold." And so the devil gave him what he wanted. Matthias returned home very contented. The devil also went home and told the other devils what had happened. The other devils told him that 200 pounds of gold was far too much and thought how best to get it back. Then one of the devils had a very simple idea. "I shall simply go and ask him to give it back." So the devil went to him and said, 200 pounds of gold is really far too much, so I suggest the strongest between us should take it as a prize. I challenge you to a fight. I won't fight you, devil. I'll simply throw you to the ground so that you'll never get up again. But my grandfather is 188 years old and lives deep in the forest. You should go and fight him instead." So the devil and Matthias went to the forest, where Matthias told the devil to enter a cave. So the devil went in, and what do you think he found? A bear. But the devil didn't know it was a bear. The bear was lying on the ground, and so the devil woke it up. The bear was far stronger, but the devil managed to slip from the bear's grip and hurry away home again. Then the devils gathered for a second time to discuss how best to get the 200 pounds of gold back from starving Matthias. Next, the fastest devil went to see Matthias. "Matthias, the 200 pounds of gold is far too much, so let's see which one of us can run faster, and he shall have the gold. I won't compete against you, because if I start running, I'll be so fast that I'll knock down the walls of hell. But I have a son called John who will run fast against you. Come with me to the forest, because that is where John takes his midday nap." Matthias knew exactly in which bush the rabbit hid. "Wake up, John, wake up and take a race against the devil." The rabbit heard this, jumped to its feet and began to run as fast as the wind. The devil gave chase. But by the time the devil reached the forest, there was no sign of the rabbit. Who would have thought that your son could have run so fast? And with that, the devil walked back to hell. The devils gathered again to discuss the matter, and then the strongest of them said, "This time I shall go and bring back the gold." So he went to see Matthias and said to him, 200 pounds of gold is far too much. The one to win the gold will be the one of us who can carry the horse 6 times around the yard and rest no more than 3 times in total." This challenge worried poor Matthias, because he knew the horse was far too heavy for him. Then he had a thought and said to the devil, "You do it first, and then I will follow you." So the devil lifted the horse and carried it around the yard 6 times, but by the time he was done, the devil was absolutely exhausted. Then Matthias said to the devil, "The way you lifted the horse and carried it around was really no great deed, and you even stopped to rest. Now I shall take the horse between my legs and take it 9 times around the yard without stopping, even once." When Matthias dismounted, he spoke to the devil and said, "You see, I am much stronger than you are. Although I took the horse between my legs, I had no need to take a rest." Defeated, this devil went home again. Once back, the devils discussed how they would regain the gold. At last a devil stepped forth saying that he would bring back the gold. So off he went to see Matthias. 200 pounds of gold is far too much, so the one of us who can scare the other more shall have the gold. We'll have you drink hot ink today. I'll drink it. What if we harness you to a yoke and have you plough smouldering embers in hell? I'll do it if I must. What if we put you in a steel pot and pour boiling lead on you? I'll bear it if I must. Now I'll scare you. The devil realised that the man was much braver, and so he rushed back to hell and told the others, "Beware of starving Matthias. Let him have the 200 pounds of gold rather than perish, because that Matthias is a bigger devil than all of us put together." But when he died, he was not let into heaven. Off you go to hell. That's where you belong. You were good friends with the devils down there. So off Matthias went to hell, but the devils would not let him in either. Then poor Matthias sat down outside heaven's door and sits there to this day. If you go to heaven, you are sure to see him still. Hungarian Folk Tales. Stone Soup. Once upon a time, a poor young soldier was coming home from the war. The poor soul wandered from one village to another, threadbare and hungry. He was offered no bread or even a little hot soup, anywhere at all. He went from house to house asking for something to eat. But the people either set the dogs on him or told him they themselves were too poor to eat. As he carried on from gate to gate, he made up his mind to go into the first house and make a pot of soup for himself, whoever the owner of the house might be. He picked up a stone at the entrance of a house and walked in. The owner was an old woman. "Good morning, old lady." "Good morning to you, young soldier." "Are you well today, old lady?" "I am well. And how are you, young soldier?" "I'm also well. But I have to say that I would love to eat a little soup, if you have any to spare." "Oh, young soldier, I'd gladly give you some if I had any, but I'm as poor as a church mouse. I have nothing. My pantry, my attic, and my whole house are all empty. I have nothing, not even a crust of bread." "Well," said the soldier, "I'm not so poor. I have a stone right here in my pocket. I could make a soup out of it. All I need is a pot or a pan or something to cook it in." "Well, I could give you one. I have plenty of pots in the house," said the old woman, "but I have nothing to put in them." The soldier washed the stone nice and neatly and placed it in the pot. The old woman lit the fire. The soldier poured water over the stone and placed it on the fire to cook. He even stirred it with a long wooden spoon. The old woman watched him with curiosity. The soldier even tried the soup. "Well, it's good enough," he said, "but if it had a little salt in it, it would be even better." "I'll get you some salt. I have plenty." The soldier put the salt into it, stirred it, and said, "If you had a spoonful of fat, that would make it even better." The old woman said, "I do have some. I'll bring it right away." She brought a spoonful of fat and they put it in the pot. The soldier stirred it and tried it while the old woman watched his every move. The soldier said, "Well, you know, I'm used to making stone soup, but I usually make it with a piece of sausage. That gives it a better flavour." "Oh, I have some sausage," said the old woman. "I'll give you some from the pantry." Then the soldier said, "Bring 2 pieces, so then you'll have one and I'll have one too." "Very well, I shall bring 2. And the old woman brought 2 pieces of sausage. The soldier put them both in the pot, then stirred it and tried it. "Do you know," he said, "if you have some potatoes, we could cut some up and put them in here too. And if you have some vegetables, that would really top it all." "Oh, but I do have some," said the old woman, "and I'll bring them at once." So she hurried off right away, pulled up some potatoes and vegetables, which they cleaned and cut into pieces and put into the soup. Then the soldier stirred it, tasted it, and said to the old woman, "You should try it too. It's really good." The old woman tried the soup and said, "Well, I would have never have believed that you could make such a good soup from a stone." They left it to cook a while. Then the soldier said, "A little rice would improve it, but I'm not sure you have any." "Oh, but I do have some rice." Then they put some rice into the soup too. "Now it's just like the soups I usually make." Then they waited for the soup to be ready, and the soldier served the old woman and himself a bowlful each, and they both began to eat. The old woman couldn't help wondering how such a good soup like this had been made out of a stone. When they had had enough to eat, the old woman said to the soldier, "Tell me, young soldier, would you sell me this stone? Quite often I have nothing to cook, but with this stone I would always have at least a little soup." "Well, why not? It's yours for 100 florins. The old woman quickly gave him the 100 florins and wrapped the stone from the soup in a cloth, so she could use it again to make soup whenever she wanted. Then the young soldier left with the 100 florins before the old woman could change her mind. So he had satisfied his hunger, and he had 100 florins for his troubles. He walked cheerfully on till nightfall, when he met another old woman who had no idea how to make good soup out of a stone either. He played his trick again and had a good meal on top of it. And I don't know what kind of soup the old woman made after that, as I was told this story by an old aunt of mine. But I suppose they tried it when they were poor back in the old country. But whatever the case, they all lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Prince Who Wanted to Live Forever. Once upon a time there was a prince. He told his father that he did not want to die. "You should know, son, that he who is born will also die." But the prince insisted that he did not want to die. "I'll go to Foreverland." "There's no such place, my son." "Yes, there is. I've heard of it." "Very well then, go." The prince prepared himself and wandered for many years until he came to a high mountain. He regarded the mountain and saw something at its very peak. It looked as small as a sparrow. Well, if he had come all this way, he simply had to find out what it was. It took him years to scale the mighty mountain. There he found a huge giant. He greeted the giant, and the giant returned his greeting. "What are you doing here, Prince?" "I'm looking for Foreverland. Could you tell me which way to go?" "Of course, you've arrived. Stay here with me because the Queen of Foreverland will send you here anyway." "I'd like to talk to the Queen myself. Please tell me which way to go from here." "There's a large forest over there. If you cross it, you'll find her." The prince went off to find the forest. There he came upon a magnificent palace. And there he found a kindly woman sewing in one of the rooms. "What are you looking for, Prince?" "The Queen, of course." "Well, don't go any further, because she will send you here anyway. Stay with me, and we can talk. But I wish to talk to the Queen herself. You cannot get in to see her, because you have to go through 3 iron gates, and each is guarded by 3 wild beasts. But if you don't want to stay here, I'll give you 3 bread buns. Should the animals attack you at the gates, give them a bun, and the iron gates will open." And so it all happened. When the 3rd iron gate opened up, the prince saw the Queen was standing in the middle of a courtyard. She asked the prince what had brought him to her palace. "I've come looking for you." "Then stay here with me." And the prince stayed. Time went by, and one day the prince said to the Queen, "Listen, I'd like to go home. I left my old parents behind, and I'd like to see how they are." The Queen laughed. "Being a prince has not made you any wiser. How many years do you think you've been here? 3 years? You've been here for 3,000 years, but I won't keep you from going if you really want to. I'll give you a pair of shoes. Take them with you. A man will attack you. Tell him you'll go with him and then put on these shoes." So the prince set off, and he wandered and wandered until he reached a town. But the town was no longer the same as it had been. He asked a few people if they knew the king by such and such a name. No, nobody knew him. He asked the oldest looking man who was the oldest man in town. The man showed him the house where a 300-year-old man lived. The prince went to see him. "Do you remember my father, old man?" "Oh, my son, I've never even heard of him." As night fell, the prince found himself a room, made himself a bed out of hay, and went to sleep. In the morning, he woke up with a man standing right in front of him. "Hail, Prince! I've been looking for you for 3,000 years, and now I've found you. Come with me because you ought to have died a long time ago." "Wait a minute, let me put on these shoes. Let's go out, and then I'll go with you." When the prince put on the shoes, they whizzed him away at once. Death rushed after him everywhere but failed to catch the prince. When the prince reached the walls of the Queen's palace, the Queen of Foreverland was standing there in the courtyard. She shouted to Death, "Don't you touch that man. I'll go out and take care of him. I'll throw him up high, and if he falls outside the walls, he'll be yours. But if he falls within the walls, he'll be mine." When the king threw the prince up high, Death danced and clapped, thinking that he was going to fall outside. But as it happened, he landed within the walls. The Queen then chased Death away, telling him never to return to her land again, otherwise he would surely die himself. So the prince stayed with the Queen, and they both lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Witch. Once upon a time, there lived an old man who had 3 sons. When all 3 were fully grown, they decided to marry and told their father of their wish. "Very well, but one at a time. I want you all to take a walk, and the one who returns with the prettiest flowers will be the first to marry." The 2 elder brothers did not even leave the village. Both of them had a sweetheart, so each of them brought a nice bunch of flowers back to their father. The youngest son, however, had no sweetheart, so he went out of the town to look for flowers. He walked and he walked until he eventually came to a vast forest, in the middle of which he came across an old palace surrounded by a flower garden. "Oh, if only I could pick flowers in this beautiful garden." The youngest son was still standing there when a witch appeared in the garden and asked him, "Why are you so sad, my child?" Then the young man told her what his problem was. "If all you need are flowers, come with me and I shall give you some." Then she took him into the garden and picked a bunch of beautiful flowers. As soon as the poor man caught sight of the flowers, he said to his eldest sons, "Well, sons, it will be your younger brother who will marry first, because he has returned with the best blossoms." But the elder brothers complained to their father so bitterly that he eventually agreed to set a second test. "Very well, the second test shall be he who brings back the prettiest kerchief shall be the one to marry first." So the sons went off, the 2 elder ones to their sweethearts in the village, and the youngest one to the witch in the forest. "What do you need this time, my child?" The youngest son told her, and so the old witch went back into the palace and brought the young man a beautiful gold-trimmed kerchief that bedazzled the boy. The 2 elder brothers also brought a kerchief each, but the youngest son's was by far the loveliest of the lot. The elder brothers were very upset, and so their father eventually agreed to set a 3rd test. "Very well, go and bring me your sweethearts. He who brings me the loveliest girl shall be the one to marry first." This was easy for the two elder brothers, because they both had sweethearts in the village. But where, oh where, should the youngest brother look for a bride? Who could he take to his father? Should he fetch the old witch who had given him the flowers and the kerchief? So the youngest son set off with his head hung low. He walked into the forest, stopped in front of the palace, and leaned against the fence with a face as sad as the autumn rain. "What's the matter with you, my child?" "Oh, don't even ask me what the matter is. My father told us that the son who took the prettiest sweetheart home would be the first to marry." "Don't hang your head, my child, but come with me to the palace. Here's a fireplace. Make a fire. With every flame that flickers up, a witch will appear before your eyes. Fear not and stand bravely there until you see the last and ugliest witch of all that will have a bunch of keys between her teeth. Then you need to snatch the keys, otherwise the rest of the witches will tear you apart. And now the rest is up to you." Saying nothing more, the old witch vanished. The young man made a fire in the fireplace, and as the flames began to grow and crackle, a witch emerged from the flames. The youngest son was so afraid that a shiver of fright ran down his spine. Then a second flame leapt forth, producing a second witch. Then many more witches followed this one. Eventually, the last witch appeared with a bunch of keys between her teeth. The youngest son gathered all his courage and snatched the keys, and, wonder of wonders, the ugly witch turned into a beautiful princess. The youngest son was too surprised to speak. All the witches then vanished from the room and were replaced by a throng of graceful maidens. Then the pretty princess said, "You must be very surprised. I'll have you know that I was the old witch who gave you the flowers and the kerchief. You must have been sent here by God, because I was a princess and a spell was cast on me. Had you not appeared, I would have remained an old witch, and now we shall be together for the rest of our natural days." The poor man was in good spirits and said, "Very well, I will let my elder sons marry too." And that they did, and their younger brother gave them each a house with plenty of land. Then the youngest and most fortunate son took his bride back to the palace, where they lived happily ever after.